Hi everyone, I'm Katie Couric. Today we're having a conversation with Glenn Beck, who's really a one-man cottage industry as a radio show, TV show, best-selling author, very controversial. You either love him or you hate him, on the cover of Time magazine this week, so we thought he'd be worth your time and mine. And I want to say thank you to Dove for making @Katie Couric possible. They're our sponsor and we appreciate it very much. I'm going to start by paraphrasing Admiral Stockdale in that infamous vice presidential debate.
Yes.
Who are you and why are you here?
I have absolutely no idea. I know who I am. I don't know why I'm here. I find myself in an incredible place. I'm a guy who grew up in a working class family. My dad was a baker, had been for generations. Didn't go to college. Just wanted to be a radio guy. And I find myself now in a position, last week I saw, there's nothing, you probably know this, there's nothing quite as stunning as seeing your face on the cover of Time magazine. And I was in my office and I look up at the television and I just said to my crew, oh, this isn't going to be a good day. And they were showing the picture of Time magazine.
In a very flattering shot, I might
Yes,
add. You're sticking your tongue out?
Yeah, yeah. That's an old shot that they used, and I said to somebody the other day, I said, the great thing about it is you can tell the age of any photograph by me by counting the chins. It's all, my chins are almost like the rings of a tree.
How would you describe your brand of politics?
I don't know. Libertarian, but I hack the libertarians off.
Why?
Because I still believe in a strong national defense, although I'm becoming more and more libertarian every day on fight to win it. It was my real problem with George Bush. You fight and you win. It's immoral to not fight quickly. If you're going to choose to fight, you fight with everything we have, you finish it as quickly as possible, and then you come home, and you don't park people all around the world.
Sort of the Colin Powell Pottery Barn strategy.
Get in there, get it done,
yep,
and get out.
Clear exit strategy.
Yep.
How would you say you're more conservative than liberal?
Yeah. I used to be a real social liberal, but that's only because, I don't mean to offend anybody here, but what the heck, I will anyway. I was an alcoholic. I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I think I was more of a liberal, not for any thought process other than I just wanted to keep my options on the table. You know what I mean? Just keep everything out there. So hey, that's cool. I'm cool with that. When I sobered up, I started looking at all of the things that I believed in and decided to take everything out and only put the things back in me that I knew to be true. Not because somebody told me, not because of a political party, not because of my upbringing, but because I really thought it. And then I would put it back in, and then I would look at all the other things that I found were true, and then I would match them. If one of them didn't fit with the other, then one of them had to be wrong.
I'm trying to understand the liberal alcoholism analogy.
See, it's liberals they don't understand that. I think they're all, no.
No, explain it, because some people might be scratching their heads and saying,
socially liberal, being able to keep absolutely everything on the table, being able to say, no, there's nothing wrong with that, and it doesn't hurt society here, and it doesn't hurt society there, I think is an easy way to live your life.
So you think people who are socially liberal make excuses for bad behavior? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think some do, not all.
Because some people might say they want to allow people to do things, and that in a weird way, government shouldn't necessarily be involved.
No, see, now here's the difference. This is why I'm libertarian. I don't want a government telling me what you can do and what I can do. What your choices are, those are your choices. I'm not going to regulate what your choices are. You want to eat all health food, that's fine. I want to eat all Doritos, that's fine. But the consequences fall on you and fall on me. That's the libertarian in me.
But a social liberal may say the government shouldn't be involved in reproductive rights for women.
I don't think they should, except for if you're talking about abortion. Let's look at abortion as the rights of the child. I happen to believe it's a child. Some people don't. Some people in the administration are kind of queasy on when anything becomes a human, even after birth. I happen to believe it's a child.
So you think abortion should be illegal?
Yes.
Tell me, when you do your show in the afternoon, who are you talking to? Who are you reaching out to from behind that television screen?
I don't know.
Usually people visualize their audience a bit anyway.
I don't do that, but I have this weird relationship, and I didn't have it over at CNN because we were taped, and now it's live, and so there's difference with me with live. I don't visualize anybody, but it's almost like I do see them. I feel them on the other side.
Who are they?
I don't know, just people that are not, they don't care about the parties. They care about their life. They're just somebody, I described the show. When CNN first came to me, they said, you don't want to do a show? And I said, have you watched cable news? The last thing I want to do is come home, put my feet up. I've worked all day. Somebody's been screaming at me. I come home, my wife, my kids, she's had problems all day. The kids are having problems. I'm trying to problem solve. I'm going to sit down at 9 o'clock at night, put my feet up, and have two people yelling at each other all day. I don't want that. They're people who just want to understand what's going on. They don't want to hate anybody. They don't want to yell at anybody. They quite honestly don't want to get off their couch at night or on a weekend and go march in a tea party. They don't want to do that. But they've come to the place in their life where they see and say, wait a minute, the Republicans have betrayed me. The Democrats have betrayed me. I know what I believe. I don't hate anybody, but I don't see an exit strategy here. I don't see how continuing to spend this money and continuing to grow this government and continuing to let corruption go out of control ends well for my kids.
Do you think they feel disenfranchised, that Washington, no matter what party you're talking about, it doesn't care about them?
Yeah, big time. This is something that I started warning against maybe as early as 2004, but definitely after 2006, to the Republicans. Once the Republicans, first thing that George Bush did was prescription drugs. And he disenfranchised his base. And this is where the media doesn't get it. He disenfranchised his base and says, I'm for small government. Here's a huge government program that's way out of control. Then when he said, I'm for security, that's one thing that the people who voted for George Bush really believed in. Security. Well, I'll take the rest of it because he really believes in security. But then he left the border open. That doesn't make any sense at all. And so what I started talking about at the time is, this guy's in bed with giant corporations. What are we doing here? There's something else going. There's another agenda here, and it's not security. So what's happening? Well, the politicians didn't listen at the time, and the Republicans so disenfranchised their base, they caught on, wait a minute, you're about something else. Now the Democrats are doing it, and they're disenfranchising their base as well. People aren't going to stand for it.
Why do you say the Democrats are doing it now? How so, and
I
why?
think you're seeing the ultra left. I think you're seeing Barack Obama make decisions that are upsetting to the ultra left. I think you're seeing people make decisions. I mean, on the czar thing, it was so bizarre. I saw this commercial by the DNC, which I'm not running for office or anything, and they were bashing me on the czars and saying Bush had more. So wait a minute, I just want to make sure I understand this. The guy who ran on change, that we can't be anything like the Bush administration, is now saying, well, he did it. What is that?
Well, when you criticize Obama for czars, do you mention that they had about the same number?
I don't know if I've specifically mentioned that.
Do you think you should? Since you're kind of an equal opportunity basher
but my
at times?
problem was, I mean, Bill Clinton had czars, and I never mentioned it about him. My problem is not with the czars per se. It's who the czars are, the background, some of the beliefs of some of these people. They're out of step with the mainstream, and I don't mean the Republicans. I mean Democrats too. Here's the thing that always gets lost, Katie, is I don't have a problem with Democrats. In 2004, when Michael Moore was put into the presidential box of at the convention with Jimmy Carter. I went on the air and said, Democrats, what are you doing? This guy isn't a Democrat. This guy is an anti-capitalist. This is not a guy who believes in, oh my gosh, look how great America is. This is a guy who loves Cuba. What are you doing? You think you're using him as you're looking at me like.
No, I'm listening.
No, I know,
No,
but
no,
in your mind, oh, I see it, in your mind.
Is smoke coming out of my ears? No, I'm listening. I'm curious if...
I think Democrats thought we're using him for fuel for anti-George Bush. Indeed, it was the other way around. And I think the Democrats have been co-opted by the uber left. Democrats don't hate the Constitution. They don't hate the Republic. They don't want to destroy America. They don't think that Cuba has a better healthcare system than we do.
These are all things that you think Michael Moore believes.
Yeah, I'm pretty clear on that one, yeah. And I think those in the uber left that are not Democrats believe. There's going to come a time, I really think, 70% of America agrees. 70% of America. You could be Republican, Independent, Democrat. We all love America. We all think that we can be great. We all know that it's the individual that makes all the difference. We might disagree on health care. We might disagree on this, on that, but there's 70% of us. Right now, we're being controlled by the 20 or 30% of both sides. Let's give it 15% each. Both sides of the nut job fringes on the left and the right.
But if you had to be on either side, you'd be more comfortable on the right?
Of the fringes? No. I wouldn't be comfortable with either of them. The fringes are what's pulling us apart. We've lost the thing that, the e pluribus unum. We've lost the thing that brings us together.
But a lot of people would say, Glenn Beck, you're stirring that. You know, of course, you've read everything that's been written about you lately.
No, not
that
all.
you're
Not all of it.
You've seen it or been made aware that you're kind of being divisive. You're making people angry. You're making people hate the country. And you have a lot of detractors. Stephen King calls you Satan's mentally challenged younger brother. You know, we asked Twitter questions and said, what would you ask Glenn Beck? Some people couldn't believe that we were even giving you a platform.
I know.
Because they feel that you are bad for America.
I will say
want
this,
you
and
to
no offense.
respond to them.
You wouldn't believe how many people tweeted me this weekend that said, I can't believe you're sitting down with Katie Couric. She's bad for America. Are we going to listen to those people? Or do we sit down and try to find real answers?
What would you say to the people who say he just resorts to inflammatory, unfair, despicable, hateful rhetoric?
Did they say that when I was saying the same things about George W. Bush? Or is this new? Did they say that when I was making the same complaints about an out-of-control government run by the Republicans?
Some people might be surprised to hear some of your views. You agree with President Obama on gay marriage, correct? Tell me about that.
You have the right to marry. You want to do that? That's fine. Why don't we let the states decide? Why don't we let people make their own decisions? Who am I to say that?
You oppose a constitutional amendment banning flag burning.
Banning flag burning, yes.
Why?
Because if you fought for anything, what you fought for was freedom to stand up and say and fight for what you believe in. The flag, it bothers me so much because it's become about parties. It's become about positions. It's not. It represents all of us. And if I can't say the most offensive thing I can do, I collect flags. The most offensive thing you can do is burn one in disrespect. But that should be protected.
Let me ask you about President Carter's recent statements. I know you've talked about this, but he talked about the intense animosity being exhibited toward the president as being fueled by racism. The Obama administration disagreed with that, but I'm just curious what your take was.
He has a right to say it. I disagree with him.
Do you really think he's the ideological ally of Osama bin Laden, as have you've sort of implied that?
No, I said, if you want to see who thinks you should listen to President Carter about race, you should listen to what Osama bin Laden said. And we played the tape of Osama bin Laden saying, basically, Jimmy Carter's right about race, and the role racism plays. Do I think that Jimmy Carter agrees with Osama bin Laden? No. Do I think Osama bin Laden agrees with Jimmy Carter about race? I looked at his words, yes.
Do you think any of the animosity that we've seen over health care or the stimulus package or the auto bailout, do you think any of it is fueled by racism?
Any of it is a large statement. I think that there are people of all color that hate based on color. I think that is such a small minority in this country. I think people see things, a larger percent, but still in the minority, see things through the prism of color, but generally not through the hatred of color.
So you think there could be people who are racist who are participating in some of these things, but for the vast majority?
The vast majority of people on both the left and the right are people who are tired. They're tired, Katie. Do you have time to talk? Look how much time we're spending on politics in our lives. Do you have time for it? I don't have time for it in my real life. I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be thinking about this all the time. My wife looks at me at midnight and says, honey, turn the computer off. I'm like, I know, but I got to finish. It's insane. Look how much politics are eating up, sucking out of. Do you think we could be energy free if we use the same amount of time and effort and money that we do on politics? You're darn right. The average person is tired. They're tired. And they've also come to a point to where they no longer see our children or our children's children having the kind of opportunity and life that we have, because we've spent ourselves into oblivion. Both sides have done it. It's got to stop.
So you think it's mostly about big government and government spending and not
It's
racially
about the
motivated?
end of,
I just want to put
yes,
a button on that.
It's about the future.
Let me ask you, Glenn, having said that, I'm just curious, when you
That sounded like a setup. Was I too dumb to catch that?
No, not at all. But when you see posters, I'm curious, of President Obama dressed like an African tribesman.
Haven't seen those posters.
Or a poster, well, they've been at some of these events.
There's
posters of anti-healthcare events, posters of President Obama with the Hitler mustache. I'm curious, are you comfortable with that? Does that make you uncomfortable?
Look, I'm as comfortable with that as I was when the people who were marching against the war were doing it with George W. Bush. There's as many of those pictures available as there are now. What you're seeing here is the same thing that the left, and see, this is where the Democrats and the Republicans should be able to unite. If you believed that George Bush had too much power and was growing things and could easily seize, I mean, the Patriot Act bothered me, really bothered me. Said at the time, you don't want to give any government this kind of power. Well, the people, a lot of Republicans, hammered me at the time. Where are the people that were the Democrats that were saying, yes, you're right, we don't want to give this guy this much power? You don't want to give any president this much power. And so what you're seeing with those, I think, is the idea that your president could go fascist like that if you continue to give them power, Republican or Democrat. It's a pendulum. It swings back and forth. All it takes is an emergency. Republican or Democrat grabs it and
Do you
says,
really
I'll
believe
save you.
a president of the United States could become a fascist?
If you're not afraid of your government, you need to go back and read the words of George Washington. The government can become a nightmare. George Washington said, it's like fire. Fire can be your best friend or your worst enemy. You better control it and watch it.
I don't mean to obsess about race, but it's been something that you've talked about. You said President Obama has a, quote, deep-seated hatred for white people or the white culture? And later you said, this guy is, I believe, a racist. I know you spent a show talking about that and defending your position, but can you explain to people right now in a shorter form why you think President Obama is a racist?
Let's see. Give you a soundbite on a soundbite
Well, this
that
is
caused trouble.
This is unedited. No,
I'm tempted.
do you still believe that he is a racist?
I believe that what is important for any president, for any populace to look into, is to be able to look in and say, as a populace, who's leading us? How does he make decisions? What does he base it on? If you had George Bush sitting here in the same situation, remember, put it in context of the time this happened. This is Barack Obama saying, I don't have any of the details of my friend, who happens to be African American, busted by a white cop. I don't have any of the details, but the cops were stupid. Well, wait. So what prism are you, if you don't have the details, what is it that colored your glasses to say the cops were wrong? What was it?
A history of racial profiling in this country?
Okay, a history of racial profiling. So if you, then that's good. Then that's the prism you're looking through. Isn't that important to know? Isn't that important to know that the president comes at it with the cops are wrong because of my history tells me.
A statement he refuted later. And also, I mean, is that the same as saying he's a racist? I mean, that's a pretty, yes, everyone's colored by their own experiences.
Sure.
Everybody sees things from their own particular prism. But saying that this happens in this country, is that really the same as being a racist, Glenn?
I think what we have to do, Katie, is, first of all...
Are you sorry you said that at all?
I'm sorry the way it was phrased, because I think everybody has to, living in a soundbite world, really a nasty place to live. And it is a serious question that I think needs serious discussion. That's why the next day I talked about it for 30 minutes and laid out the case on why I think it's a serious question and something to seriously look at. Again, if George Bush would have sat, and let me ask you this question, if he would have sat in a pew for 20 years where he had a preacher saying, black people are wrong and bad, black people are poisoning white people, would you not question if he immediately made a snap judgment on something and said the black cop was wrong?
So you're bringing it back to Reverend Wright.
That's one example.
Let me ask,
I've got 30 minutes, and we could go longer on that than we did it. I mean, you can go to glennbeck.com and look at all of them.
A Twitter question is, Adrian from Florida said, what do you mean by white culture?
I don't know.
You said he had a deep-seated hatred for the white culture. What is that? What is the white culture?
Just, gosh, I'm so tempted to help make news here today.
Well, no, I'm just curious. This was actually Adrian from Florida.
What to do? Adrian, go to glennbeck.com, listen to it. You can hear all of it.
No, but you didn't really address white culture, I think, in your explanation about President Obama. I haven't seen the whole show, but can you just, for our purposes...
Just for your purposes?
Yeah.
So this will be a little secret between us?
No, for this show, can you explain what you mean by the white culture? Because some people might say that sounds kind of racist.
Really? It's amazing to me that for the first time, I think, in history, somebody can ask a question and say, don't you think that maybe we have several pieces here? We have several pieces. George Bush says, my grandmother was a typical African American that had her views bred into her. You don't think maybe we would ask questions about that comment? How is it that the first time, I think in history you should check on it, somebody says, hey, there's some red flags here maybe we should look at? has become the target. How am I the target for asking questions?
People just want to know, what is white culture?
I'm gonna see if I can play your game. People just want to know.
You know, well, Adrian wants to know.
That's good for Adrian.
No, but I mean, it's fine. If you make a statement, though, shouldn't you be able to defend exactly what you mean by it?
Katie, how many times have you said something where you're like, I didn't think, what's the white culture? I don't know, what's the white culture? What is the white culture? I don't know how to answer that. That's not a trap.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not trying to trap you. I think people wanted to know what that meant exactly.
Well, we know Adrian does.
Yeah, and you're not going to answer her?
I'm not going to get into your soundbite
Well,
gotcha
no,
game, which we already are.
No, we're actually, this is completely unedited. So if you felt like you wanted to explain it, you have all the time in the world.
Mm-hmm.
No? Don't want
Nope.
to go there? But basically, you stand behind your assertion that, in your view, President Obama is a racist.
I believe that Americans should ask themselves tough questions. Americans should turn over all the rocks and make their own decisions.
Couldn't you say the same thing about a white president, though, Glenn, who's been shaped by his personal experiences?
Sure could.
You know.
Sure could.
And would you?
Yes, I would.
And would you say that
If
white president could be racist as well?
Absolutely would. Woodrow Wilson, the biggest racist bigot ever to serve in office. Bigot. We had a military that was not segregated. He separated the racists, separated the soldiers. He was an absolute racist.
Let me ask you about this Slate blogger, Glenn Mickey Koss. He criticized left-wing rhetoric, by the way, against, are you familiar with this guy,
No.
President Bush? He wrote about you specifically saying, quote, Glenn Beck puts his Obama criticism in an apocalyptic framework as if Obama is staging some sort of coup that might seem to justify violence. Someone on Twitter asked, will you feel any responsibility if someone is hurt as a result of your rantings?
Well, if they would have acted out under George Bush, I guess you could have said the same thing, because I've been warning against it for years.
Warning against what? Against?
Of people acting out against their government, because their government is not listening to them. It's not listening to them. It's got to start listening to the people. I think we are in a situation of danger, but it's not because of Barack Obama. Everybody wants to make this about Barack Obama or race or whatever. It's not. It's about the government not listening to people.
You've joked on your show about poisoning Nancy Pelosi.
Wait, ask this question again. I just want to hear how you asked it.
You've joked on your show about poisoning Nancy Pelosi. You've said there are people you want to hit on the head with a shovel, including Congressman Charlie Rangel. Now, I guess the question is, do you ever feel like that crosses the line? Do you feel like that's part of your show business side, your sort of rodeo cowboy side, or?
Have you asked Jon Stewart this question? I am the other end of the spectrum.
Well, do you consider yourself more like Jon Stewart than, say, a journalist?
I consider myself, I'm not a journalist. I'm an opinion guy. You tell me, where that line is when you just said it, the question was, you joked about. Comedy is extraordinarily difficult. It is the easiest thing to be straight all the time, especially in heated times. If you watch the show or listen to the show, you'll see that the comedy has gone way down, because I know the sensitive times that we're living in, and it's way too easy to make a mistake. Easy to make a mistake in comedy.
Here's another Twitter question. Why do you carry forth stories like the FEMA internment camps with adequate research? I know You talked about that. Ultimately, you said it wasn't true, but do you feel
Did you
uncomfortable
listen?
at all saying, you know, I can't debunk this, I can't disprove it, but this is something that's out there?
The days where CBS can sit there and say, we're going to sit on a story and we're not going to recognize it, is over. You can't sit on a story and make it go away. The internet is alive. When something has 3 million views just on one YouTube video, it's no longer a secret. It's no longer, it must be addressed. If you don't address it, pretty soon there's a growing number of people that think we didn't go to the moon.
But don't you think you should address it after you either prove it or disprove it? I'm
I
just
did.
curious.
If you listen to the radio show, see, I'm different with my audience. I trust my audience. I trust that people understand that I'm going to tell you where I'm going. Look, when I did the FEMA camp, that came from me snapping on the air. It's somebody coming up and saying, Glenn, why won't you address the FEMA camp? I said, I've had enough of it. I've had enough of the FEMA camp thing. I've been talking about it since George Bush was in office. Stop with the FEMA camps. So I said to my producers, can we please disprove this, please? Got back, a week went by. Can't disprove it, can't disprove it. You gotta be kidding me. We can't disprove this? We can't disprove this. When I saw how thin, we hadn't done the things that I wanted to do, which was go find the pictures. You can find the camp that they say is a camp. Go find it. Match those pictures that you're seeing on YouTube. We did. When we did, it was easy to debunk. I never was a believer in the FEMA camp. I set out to debunk it. How is it I'm a conspiracy theorist when I set out to debunk it?
So you would say you're not a conspiracy theorist at all?
I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
Let me ask you about your Mormonism, because I think that's fascinating. You and your wife, I guess, as I understand it, decided to become Mormons later in life. And I'm curious, what is it about the faith that appealed to you? And how does it, or does it in any way, shape kind of what you do and how you think?
It helps me live my life in a sober way. It teaches me to serve others. It teaches me that we're all born as God's children, that it doesn't matter what we've done, there is a path back to Him. It teaches me the truth on my family and my children, that the family is sacred, and that my children and I and my wife, we will know each other through the eternities. And that gives me a great deal of peace and comfort.
Your mom, I know, committed suicide when you were just 13 years old. How did that affect you? That's a very important age, adolescence.
I think it drove me into it drove me into work, and it drove me into alcoholism. It was the motivating factor of the first half of my life. I was on a path to destroy myself, and it got to the point in the 90s where I was either going to live or die, and I knew I couldn't live the way I was, lying mainly to myself, and then eventually to everybody else in my life, and hated myself, and had to change my life. My mom didn't know how to. I didn't know either, but over time found it.
I'm curious, after following this summer of our discontent, where there was sort of an escape valve for a lot of anger in this country, especially I think over the administration's approach to solving some of the nation's problem. After the anger, what then? Can this sentiment, this expression, be channeled into anything productive? Do you think it's possible for some kind of consensus in a country that does seem to be,
Not-
at least from the nation's airwaves, so extraordinarily polarized?
Not without the truth, not without an end to corruption. If we don't stop corruption, we're done. There's corruption. I mean, that's what everybody always comes into office. I'm going to sweep out corruption, and then they don't. And then the other side is out, and they say, this is too corrupt. I'm going to sweep out corruption.
But what does corruption mean? What does that mean to you?
Not paying your taxes, sweetheart deals, drawing up stimulus packages that benefit your union buddies, bailing out banks like George Bush did for all of his banking buddies. What is this? What is this? Well, when did we become this country that everything is too big to fail? What about the little guy? And I don't mean the little guy, the faceless little guy, but I mean the little guy like my dad was when I was growing up. I mean, my grandfather was a little guy. My grandfather wouldn't have taken a dime from the government. That's not who we are. Well, the one thing I learned in the 1990s at the very bottom of my journey is failure is a good thing. It's either going to destroy you or it's going to rebuild you into something good and strong. We've got to be the country and the people again that understand failure is good. You can't bury failure.
Do you think the auto industry should have just failed, the
Yep.
U.S. auto? You do?
Yeah. Why are we bailing out a company that couldn't make it in the good times? Give somebody else a try.
Let me ask you about this campaign to get people to boycott your show by the color of change. Is it something that troubles you? Do you think it's a statement about some of the work you're doing or the information you're providing? What is your reaction to it?
I don't spend a lot of time in my day even thinking about it. I don't believe in boycotts. Didn't believe in when the right was trying to do them, to Hollywood. Americans need to be able to speak freely and speak without fear. Speak without fear.
Let me do a quick name game thing for you, can I? Just quick responses. It's sort of fun.
I don't know.
President Obama.
A name game. I'm supposed to give you a word back.
Well, it doesn't have to be one word. It could be a little more. It could
President.
be more than president. Anything you like about Barack Obama?
An incredible speaker.
You're going to say public speaking.
Yeah, he's incredible. I think he's extraordinarily bright.
Nothing else besides public speaking and intelligent? Anything?
I like his family. I think he seems to be a good dad.
What about his emphasis on civility? How do you feel about that?
I think it's very presidential of him.
Lou Dobbs.
Anchor, CNN.
That's it?
I mean,
Do you have an opinion about him?
No, he was always a nice guy to me.
Do you agree with him on
I
a
don't
lot
ever
of his
watch
positions?
him really.
Congressman Joe Wilson.
Disagreed with when he did it. Agreed with his right to do it, not necessarily at the time he did it.
Dick Cheney.
Like him better out of office than in office.
Hillary Clinton.
I can't believe I'm saying this. I think I would have much preferred her as president and may have voted for her against John McCain.
Why?
Because I think John McCain is weird progressive like Theodore Roosevelt was. I think John McCain would have been worse. How about this? I think John McCain would have been worse for the country than Barack Obama. How's that?
Sarah Palin.
Like her because she went after her own party first. She cleaned up the Republicans. I'm so tired of hearing about how bad the Democrats are from the Republicans and how bad the Republicans are from the Democrats. Clean up your own party. That's what she did. What role she plays in the future? No idea.
Rush Limbaugh.
Very nice man. He's been very gracious to me.
Do you feel like you're competing against him?
Not at all.
Some people say that a guy named Mark McKinnon said there are two people in the world who should be afraid of you, President Obama and Rush Limbaugh.
Both untrue. Both untrue.
And in closing, there's been so much discussion about health care, and I'm just curious, How would you fix the healthcare system in this country?
would-
A, do you think it's broken? And B, how would you fix it?
I think the healthcare system is not broken beyond the repair, has problems, has serious problems. One is we don't treat people like people. We treat them as numbers. And
Because I think you had a bad experience,
Yeah, I
didn't you,
did.
in the healthcare
Horrible.
system?
And part of it was I was not treated as, I wasn't seen as a human being. I was just a patient, number XYZ, go do this. Part of it was the nurses that we have now. The good nurses are busting their butt. I think there's too few of them. And the ones that we do have, because I had this conversation while I was in the hospital, they're afraid. They're afraid of the litigious nature of our society. Are you going to go in and do anything that you might get in trouble for? You want to fix it. I think, first of all, let me buy healthcare. The reason why the government says they can compete is because that healthcare plan will be the same all around the country. Why can't I buy a plan that I want from another state? Why am I limited to just X number of plans in certain states? I should be able to buy across state lines. Let the market work. If you want to get people who don't have access to healthcare, let's talk to the doctors. Let's say to the doctors, hey, we're going to give you a tax break for every bit of medical care that you provide. You want to make sure that people who can't afford it get health care. Instead of revamping the whole system, let's take the strain off of our hospitals by building little community clinics and centers and pay for those. Take the strain off of the hospitals and emergency rooms before you revamp the entire system. The entire system still, it's like democracy or the republic. Does it stink? Yes. Is it the best system out there? Yeah.
Even though you had a bad experience, you still think it's the best system out there?
Name the other system.
I'm just asking you.
I interview her because that's a much easier position to take.
No, I mean, but in spite of its problems, you still think?
It's the best system out there. Can it be fixed? Yeah. Does it need to be? Yeah.
Will it be?
I don't think by Republicans or Democrats. Not the way we're currently going.
So who will?
I don't know,
Those are
Katie.
kind of our only options at this point.
I have great hope that both parties are going to start listening to reason and not special interests. Stop listening to the attorneys and the unions and whoever's coming through your office on left and right. Stop and do the right thing. Do the right thing.
All right. Well, Glenn Beck, thank you for doing this. And you've
you.
got a new book out, we should mention, since it's coming out this week, called Arguing with Idiots.
I mean, that sounds inflammatory.
Oh,
That just
it's
sounds...
your title, not mine.
That's the name of this thing? That's wrong. I apologize.
Thanks, Glenn.
Katie.
Thank you so much. That was fun talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
As you just heard, Glenn Beck's newest book is called Arguing with Idiots. Anyway, thanks for watching. We hope you found this interesting, enlightening, informative. And thank you for all of you who sent your questions via Twitter. We tried to use as many of those as we could. Anyway, as you probably know by now, I'm Katie Couric, and now it's time for a message from our sponsor, Dove.